Welcome to the GEMS report. If you are wondering if you accidentally stumbled onto the Firefighter Nation Network, you did not. My name is Stephanie White. I'm the managing editor of Firefighter Nation, but every other week they make me go across the floor and write a medic unit. So I am cross collaborating with GEMS today, and I am talking to the lovely Stacee Ramirez and Dani. I know I'm going to butcher your last name. So Dani
Landholm.
Landholm. Okay, wasn't
Yep.
as bad as I thought. Stacee wrote an amazing article for GEMS, and it was called "The Woman in the Ambulance Next to Me." No, "The Woman Next to Me in the Ambulance," and it's about a survey that you did about women in EMS. And I really thought that that translated really well to a lot of work that Dani, you are doing. You are the vice chair of the IFF's new Women's Health and Safety Committee. And I've had a conversation with you in the past, and it just, Stacee's articles so closely mirrored conversations we had had. So I wanted to have you on here as well to kind of drive home that the things that you discovered, Stacee, really aren't one person's experience, right? These are things that you're in a different part of the country than me, than Dani, that we see in all corners of America in both fire and EMS. So talk about the article. First off, what made you want to do this survey that you did?
So I worked in a fire department for years before going into education. I'm a medic and I became a paramedic teacher. But I started noticing trends while I was working in the fire department. I mean, we didn't have a big women employee population. We probably had, I don't know, a total of 7 to 10 at one time. And I just noticed this really sad trend of women suffering in silence. I had close friends that, had miscarriages while on duty, or part of, they would have to get sent home because of what was going on with their reproductive health. And granted, we were a mix of fire and EMS. So they saw a side that I didn't because they were on the fire side. You're exposed to carcinogens and things of that nature. But I started to notice when I went into EMS education and I was around more private EMS service employees that they were experiencing the same thing. And I wondered, does it have to do with the sleep deprivation? Does it have to do with the chronic stress? Does it have to do with the fact that we are always in fight or flight? And I thought one of these days, I had a very, very small platform online, but I thought one of these days I'm going to survey the women and hopefully they will feel comfortable enough to open up and let me know if this is just something that happens to be a coincidence in my area. We live in an oil-filled region. There's also environmental factors that could come into play. Or is this something nationwide that women are experiencing? So, as y'all know, in America, we kind of have the fire EMS service. That's something that isn't super common in Europe, Canada, but America in general, we kind of cross over. And so that opened up even more of a population to survey. So I put the survey out there at the very end of last year, and the response was overwhelming. I would say in the first 1 to 2 weeks, I would say in the first week, I had close to 1,500 responses, something of that nature. And I mean, I was getting women's feedback. People would send me messages. Hey, thank you for putting the survey out there. I went through this. My sister went through that, or my mom had this. And I left a little spot in my survey where they could put their personal experience, and it was all anonymous. But some of the stories that they sent in, they were just heartbreaking. And they only validated what I thought was going on, that there was this trend of silent suffering. And so that was kind of the inspiration behind it. And that's how kind of the what led up to the survey.
I thought one of the coolest parts of your article was you really started off by humanizing it, by telling stories. And I know there were anonymous stories, but they were real stories. And it really hit me as I read each one. Oh, I've seen that. And I've seen that. I've experienced that or I've heard that, and it really put a face to the problems and humanized it more than just the graph of a survey. Um, Dani, talk to me about just, I know you read the article and I know you went through it. What really popped out at you as being in a completely different part, Omaha, very far from Texas, the similarities between her article and the stories you hear?
After reading the article, I felt so connected to it. There was no other way to describe that feeling. Not only the stories didn't particularly. I was so fortunate. I didn't have reproductive problems while I was trying to conceive, but I can still remember the phone call from my doctor's office saying, "Hey, you need to go home and you need to lay down. You need to rest. You need to go get medicine. And we have to make sure that you keep that baby that you have. Congratulations." And I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, so if I stay here, how do I tell them I'm going to leave? I've been fine all day and now I'm just going to go home and nobody knows what's going on and they're going to worry about me and I'm going to worry about me and everybody in between. But I just started thinking about my friends and their experiences and the little things that I know. And I thought, how many more people do we not hear the stories about? Or when you experience something on an incident, the way that it resonates with you more because of the role you play in your life or the complications that you experience. I know for me, while the reproductive aspect of it wasn't the big problem, it was the big problem when I had to leave my babies and come back to work and try to manage the high call volume, the workload, the physical aspects, lactation, what all of that looks like, and how I was watching everything around me in my life unravel, and yet I still had a job to do. So it's great that's, there's ways around it. Your kids are resilient. They won't know any different. It's just a cost of the job and those things. And I just felt as I read the article and I read your survey results to know that happens here in Omaha. And if it's happening there, then it's got to be happening everywhere. When we gathered as a group in Washington, D.C. for our inaugural committee for the Female Health and Safety Committee, the stories were all the same. So people were experiencing reproductive issues, hormone health, just and how to balance this societal maternal instinct and also be someone who can't have those presented in their line of work. What does that look like? And how do you balance that? And how do you turn the switch off? And how do you regulate going from 0 to 10, staying at a 10 for 24 hours, staying at a 10 for 48. And then now you have to come home and be nurturing at a 3 and try to maintain everybody else's feelings.
Right?
No, absolutely.
Stacee, I think one of the most, something that really hit me with your article is when females get pregnant in the fire service that are EMS, because let's face it, most, and you already said it, most of the EMS in the country is a fire-based model. So what do most departments do? They say, okay, well, we'll just put you over on the ambulance or the medic unit. And then if you miscarry, something absolutely horrific that happens is, well, you should have known riding a medic unit or an ambulance is just as dangerous. You can get in a fight with somebody on drugs, stuff like that. You should have known the risks. And I think that is something that we're starting to hear more on the fire side of the risks of. I think they've always been a little more obvious. Hey, don't be on a medic unit, or I'm sorry, don't be on an engine when you're pregnant. But we don't really ever talk about that on the EMS side of, hey, there's still risks. And if something happens to my child, you're then going to stigmatize me for I should have gone somewhere else. To talk about the need for policies for women to be able to teach or to do. There's so many things in EMS that we can safely do that don't involve riding a rig.
And Stacey, I don't want to interrupt, but Stephanie, what you just said there couldn't have been more powerful of a statement. At any point in time, I can be a great professional. I can be great at my job. I can show up every day and do all the wonderful things. But as soon as I made the decision to, ride the ambulance because I was pregnant, or that's the job I've chosen as my career path, now I'm at fault because I put myself in that position. That at no point in time should my health be the cost of being great at my job. The job that I've been given, the job that I felt called to do. And so that's where this place for policy and transition to limited duty and what the other pieces of that make the fire department puzzle or the EMS department puzzle go together. There's places for that. And so I'll let you continue on with that policy conversation.
No, absolutely. I think too, something that I noticed in the results of the survey is there is a culture of blame. There really is. It's, well, you knew how stressful this job was. You knew what you were signing up for. And we've all heard that phrase before, probably especially as women. Like if we were bothered emotionally by a call or something, hey, you knew the risks. Like you came into this service. This is part of the job. And it's almost a culture of shame. So even your experience, Dani, where you were talking about, you were blessed with a healthy pregnancy, but you were told, hey, go ahead and go on home. And you worried about what your coworkers would think. And, you knew that they would worry about your safety, but also a part of you probably thought, like, they probably think it's no big deal and I shouldn't be leaving work and this is part of the job. And unfortunately, that's part of that culture. And that is why policies and procedures need to be in effect in these situations. First, I felt it so important that we acknowledge the problem. And I hope with this article that it's been a small piece of just acknowledging it. After we acknowledge it, then we have to figure out what's next, right? We have to figure out if it's the policies and it's so funny that y'all mentioned that that's always the answer is going to the ambulance, as if there's no danger on the ambulance. Yes, there should definitely be policies in place for maybe an education or a training role during, pregnancy, maybe that postpartum term as well. But yeah.
Somebody's got to be teaching Con Ed. It's just, there's always a space
There's something.
Or precepting or anything in EMS.
Run reviews.
Don't tell me there's not. I think one of the most fascinating things I ever heard was a guy tell me, and he was talking about a female who was pregnant. He says, yeah, she just, I guess every 2 years when she can't handle it, she keeps going and having a kid. And I looked at him and I said, how far apart are most children that you see? And he stopped and he said, oh yeah, I guess they are mostly 2 to 3 years apart. And I said, yeah, we don't want to have children that are 5 to 10 years apart. If we're planning a family, we want our kids to be able to play with each other. But just the fact that pregnancy is treated as such a inconvenience to EMS and fire departments was something that was so head scratching to me. Of you didn't even stop to consider the natural spacing of children. It just was such an excuse to you to come out of the field. And I think as much as we need policy, we also need education of being a mom is one of the most natural things in the world. Why are we attaching a stigma to it? It's not fun to be pregnant. I don't know what you think we're doing on light duty, but I assure you it's not having a great time. I don't know if you've never experienced heartburn, my good fella, but buckle up. If you're pregnant, we're not sitting there eating bonbons and having fun. Something else that really slapped me across the face, and I use that term for a reason. It was very powerful with your article, was the culture of silence. And I think, Dani, I know you've been on the job for a minute. Stacee, you have been as well. I'm rounding out towards the end of my career, and I've discovered I'm in a very unique place of seeing younger women struggle with things that I stayed silent on because I thought, oh, it's just happening to me. It's just because my personality, that one person just thinks they can get away with saying that because it's me and I did something. And now seeing younger females struggle with those same individuals, or that same lack of policy and those same problems has been absolutely horrifying. And it's because, and I'll let you talk about this more because you have clearly immersed yourself in it. We don't want to be the wave makers. We don't want to be the ones, we're rare enough as it is, and we don't want to be viewed as problems. But now, as you're discovering, we actually, by being silent, are doing a complete disservice because it's an age-old problem and it's not getting better.
That was perfect, the way that you put it, because it is so true. By not wanting to cause rifts, by not wanting to make waves, by not wanting to be the one that, you know, people talk about and they're like, oh, here Stacee goes again, or oh, here Stephanie goes again with whatever issue is going on. We're making it to where future firefighters, future EMS providers stay silent. And it just continues this trend. And that is something that I 100% noticed. And yeah, I think first, the biggest, most obvious thing that I got out of this survey was that there was this hidden culture of silence. Because being a woman in this service, anyway, it's male dominated. And just on the EMS side, only 30 to 35% of EMS clinicians are women. So already an underrepresented, you know, or a lower population, then it's male dominated is what I'm trying to say. And in the fire service, very, very similar. But in a way, we don't want to fit in, right? We want to not cause issues with our coworkers.
Don't want to be the squeaky wheel.
Yes, exactly. Which we need a squeaky wheel sometimes. We need someone to cause waves. But, you know, and I think it's been highlighted before in articles and in social media that being a woman in the service is difficult. And that's not me being dramatic. That is true, because if you say too much, you're obnoxious. If you don't say enough, you're weak. You get stepped on. So it's almost having to find this perfect, crazy balance, yes, of them both. So I love that you brought that up, because part of bringing awareness to it is being the troublemaker.
I call that the until. So everything's fine until, right? Until you have something to say, until you need something, until there's change that needs to happen.
Yeah.
So Dani, here's a question for you, because we've already stated we need health policies to protect us with all the differences in being a female. But you can't policy, because listen, we have policies in place, right? Clearly they might not always work. You can't policy out cultural issues. Where, and I 20 years later, things are definitely not where they were when I started. But I would only say I've seen a 5 to 10% change. Like, it's not been crazy leaps and bounds. How do we fix this problem that clearly has been an issue for women for many years now? Because, like I said, we have policy. Policy is not the answer. Culture is the answer.
And then we can get right back into that cultural change bear in general. And I think our actions are going to lead to bigger effects. So if we, as the experienced individuals, start to have a voice and start to raise the concerns about the aspects of, if we implement a policy, what else comes with this? If we advocate for these things, what does that voice look like? And the ripple effect of that confidence and that place of being heard, I think will carry out into our our future generations. I believe that when you're in your first year or you're brand new on the job, to speak up for yourself and advocate for yourself does exactly that, right? Now you're separating yourself from the masses, but those biological differences do separate you. And so if you can't have a voice behind them, so as we get older and we start to become more confident in ourselves and in our job and in our career, and we feel validated in what we're doing and we feel validated by our peers, we're more likely to speak up about those things. And we have to be the voice of that cultural change for those younger generations, those younger girls and women, I should say. But I find myself sitting in a place where I'm advocating and speaking about things that aren't going to affect me anymore. Our family planning is our family's complete, and that's kind of how we are. But yet here I am advocating for maternity policy because I don't believe that someone else should have to experience a place where they don't feel like they can speak up for what they need, that they don't know how to ask for what they want to do. They don't know their officers, even just our officers. It's not even just our membership that's experiencing whichever thing we're going to get into, whichever health issue. But how do I, as the officer or the person responsible for this, help my subordinate through this situation? What do I do so that they have the best outcome? Because at the end of the day, we want happy, healthy firefighters. We want happy, healthy EMS providers, and we want them to have a happy, healthy family to go to when they leave here in 30 years, right? And so the cultural piece of it, I think, really kind of starts with us. I say us in this generation that's been through those experiences, and we start to make it be a place that's comfortable to talk about. So then that way that younger generation knows that there's a place for their voice to be heard, and that there's advocacy out there for them, and that their job and their job performance shouldn't come at the expense of their health, their family, their dreams. I mean, none of that should be the cost of having this career.
Right.
No, I totally agree. I think that, and that's the difference I see, or what I did see when I was in the fire department with young women coming in and a little bit older. And when I came in, I was late 20s. I was a little bit older. I had more of an established sense of self, and kind of viewed this as, although it's something I really wanted and I wanted to do this, I knew that there was so much more, to it. Like you said, like your family, your health, your everything that makes you outside of work. And that's something that you don't really see when you're young, because you just frontal lobe and all of the things, right? So as you get older, you get this sense of self. But it's like you said, if we as older, kind of looking back on that and being like, okay, this is not working. So educating the younger ones that are coming in, like, hey, if you're having an issue, you don't have to stay silent. You can go to your supervisor, having policies in place that there's no retaliation against them if they go to their supervisor and say, I need to go on maternity leave, or I need to, I've been put on bed rest, that there's not going to be an immediate retaliation or thing of that nature. So yeah, totally agree.
I think you did an amazing job, Stacee, highlighting the different issues that females in the fire service face. So I came in to the fire service straight out of high school, so I was in a much different place than you. And I think the thing that really helped me when I ran into problems was advocates and mentors. They always happened to be males, because guess what? Back then, that's what the majority of what you were surrounded by, right? I mean, hit my camera. For a while, I was the only female in my battalion. That's just how it is. Mm-hmm. If somebody's going to step up and advocate for you, it was going to be a male. But that also, I think, was such a healthy thing for me to see. Not everybody gets that luxury. And I hate that I just use the word luxury without even thinking about it, because it should be normal. Standard. It should be standard. And I absolutely hate that was the word that my brain reached for, which I think is kind of telling. when you ran into things in your career, because I know you have probably seen many of those things that you put on that list. I'm guessing that's probably what inspired you to do that survey. What was it that really helped you get through and remain mentally healthy and still inspired to do the job on the other side?
I I think, are you talking about what we were just speaking about with the young ladies, like what they were facing, or specifically what was in the survey?
Just different, anything that was in the survey that you might have run into in your own career. I'm sure you've had some of those experiences as well. What was it that got you through that?
Well, I think one thing is you become more empathetic towards your patients that are suffering with similar things as yourself and as your coworkers. But one of the things I did run into were coworkers that were experiencing miscarriages and coming to work and just continuing to come to work as the physical process was happening to their body. You know, coming to work with the physical manifestation of losing their baby. And then, you know, after that ended, dealing with the grief and not wanting to be a burden to, you know, their male coworkers or even female coworkers, you know, not wanting to sound whiny or feeling like you're grieving too long or, oh, you were early. So it's not as bad as if you were late term. And it's like once we get into that comparing game, it's just, yeah, it's not good. But I will say, one thing that I think you start to see an increase in empathy within yourself for others, because you're like, man, I've been there and I felt unsupported, or I felt like I had to go through it alone. And you can really kind of see that, I don't know, that silent suffering and be a better patient advocate for them, but also to your coworker as well. You know, being like, hey, we're running on other people's emergencies while you are suffering
In one yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. So
it was, so I've had 4 pregnancies. My oldest and my youngest were live births, obviously, but I had 2 miscarriages in between. And I think I had, with all 4 pregnancies, I think I had a different officer for each one. And I will say all 4 times, whether it was a successful pregnancy or not, nobody knew how to handle it. But the miscarriages, because they both started on duty, it was just nobody knew how to handle the type of leave. I mean, do we make her use annual leave, sick leave if she's going to be out for a while? One of them was a later term, so there were a lot of medical issues. So coming back, they didn't know how to handle that. And then just, I think the craziest thing of all of it was that nobody said a word. Nobody from my crew, it was all male crews, said a word because they had no clue what to say. And we see it on calls, you know, they don't really know what to do with miscarrying female on medical emergencies. But I wasn't hurt by that, but I was very, I guess shocked is the best word for that one, at how terrified they were of seeing a female go through something that they themselves were never going to go through and had never been through. They had no ability to have, I know the empathy was there, but they couldn't find the words. And so they just left it alone and ignored it. And I think that was something that's such a shame because of the high percentages. People don't realize how many female EMS providers and firefighters miscarry. Dani, we were talking, this was 2 weeks ago now, about pregnancy policies. And I think that's such a core part that's missing out of most reproductive health policies is miscarriages.
Yes.
We're at such a high risk. We have them. Why aren't they in our policies?
And I think that's a great question too. And that's part of those procedural things that help out our, you know, as I'm sitting here listening to your story, people want to do good. They want to do good by you. They want you to be safe. They want you to be healthy. I know my crew did, you know, and when they don't know what to say or they don't know how to treat you, it leads to a place of silence because they don't know how to relate. They're not 100% sure. They want to do the right thing. And I think the miscarriage aspect of policy writing is also dependent on, I think there's some regional aspects of it as well. And
I think if we put it in policy, we normalize it. And I
yeah,
think when we normalize it, especially people studying for officers' tests, right? That's the only time most officers touch the reproductive health and pregnancy
yeah,
manual is when they were studying. But
yes,
I think at least putting that in there makes them say, oh, is this something that happens often? So
right.
maybe then when they become an officer, they're familiar with that concept.
Or
So
even
when they have a
even to understand general bereavement leave, and do they match? Are they the same? And what does that leave look like? And how do you move forward from it? The when the policies include steps, right? It's not all going to fit into the same storyline, but when there's a step and a process through everything, then at least you can start to filter things in the right direction so that people know what to do, how to handle it, and then raise that awareness. I think it also helps a person to understand the risks that they take in the job. That's something that's really undereducated. It's understudied because the pool of people is a lot smaller. And so that's part of where the new female health and safety committee is hoping to reach out to our firefighters, our providers, and start to have a pool of people to pull data from, to get information, to start digging deeper into that research, that we can make sure that our policies are impactful and intentional, and that they result in a positive outcome for our membership. Because at the end of the day, a bad experience is going to lead to our retention problems as well. It's going to result in you not encouraging other people to come into this profession, right? I love my job, but I don't always know if I would tell someone to be here.
female or female.
And yeah, and sometimes you take a quick look at that, and when you're talking about what things carry you along and what keeps you here, well, gosh, your sense of purpose, your pride in your job, your place, and no longer am I going to settle for it costing me the things I want to be as a person. And I feel I'm at a point in my career where I'm okay speaking up to that, because at no point in time is my striving for equality in those things intended to be a disadvantage for someone else. It's not. It's just to put us on the same playing field, so then that way my family doesn't suffer financial burden for my maternity leave. My family doesn't experience the repercussions of my hormonal problems, emotional instability, self-regulation. That and that we also know too that that's not just female specific, but we get into those categories where, because it's understudied, because the pool of people hasn't been great enough. And that's where our outreach is so important. That's why I think 1,500 replies in your survey, that's incredible. Right? I couldn't believe that number. And then to have that outreach so that we can say, okay, we've identified it. We're past the awareness level. We already know it's there. We've known it for a long time, but nobody's known how to fix it because our outreach and our pool has been so small. And maybe sometimes people don't speak up because they don't want to separate themselves. I get that. I work with great people. I would never want my people to be hurt by the things that I have to say about the experiences that I had. But not everybody gets that everywhere. And when we continue on with that outreach, we get that pool of people. Now we can provide the policies to help when those when that infrastructure doesn't exist for someone. They know where to go. They know how to do it. I mean, what about the, we're really focusing a lot on maternity here, right? But what about the female firefighter that becomes pregnant unintentionally? What about that person? And how do they advocate for themselves? How do they speak up for themselves? How do they know what to do if they're not ready to disclose that information yet? Where do we have the resources in place so that they know and can gauge and understand the risks and the benefits and not suffer any loss of pay or benefits in order to take care of themselves and their family, and yet still be great at the job that they want to be great at and serve the community they want to serve and still fulfill that sense of purpose? So, I mean, that's what my biggest hope for is, to kind of sum that up from the committee aspect, is that we create this outreach. Now you have this huge network, you have numbers that brought this awareness to here. And now we get to look at it and say, okay, if this is happening, how do we find the things to stop that and change that culture so that those women don't feel like they can't say anything anymore?
Stacee, what's the next step?
Well, that's a really, really good question. A fantastic question.
Really quick story. I had a meeting with a gear manufacturer this morning, and they said, we're going to send out a survey to women, but how do we get women to take it? I said, you don't need to worry about that. We're so not used to surveys about our health and our gear. We will be taking it. Don't you worry. Just put it out there and women will tell women about it.
Absolutely. There's some continuing education courses in the making about this because, I mean, we have to get the information out there, whether that be via conferences or via, online courses or what have you. Like, the awareness has to start somewhere. And that's why earlier I was just saying, like, this survey is just a little puzzle piece because especially on the fire side, y'all have already done some work. There's already it's almost, there was awareness amongst the women, but it's like bringing it to the surface and really showing the EMS world, the fire world, like, hey, this is an actual problem that women are facing. And I really did try to highlight, that's why I kind of told those stories because, Ruth, she was on the ambulance, had experienced her 4th miscarriage and was going in and taking care of, people who were neglecting their children, and how hard that must have been for her while she was grieving and physically going through a miscarriage. And we had Heather who, she couldn't fit into her flight suit because she has a mixture of endometriosis, PCOS, both very painful, can be very painful conditions, and was worried about getting made fun of with weight gain, which, I mean, we're women, we worry about that because, we worry that it will become, oh, she let herself go. Oh, like, here we go. And because she's a woman, we can't say anything. But if it was a man, we would say something about, physical fitness qualifications. And then I tried to highlight Heather, who, and with her, I tried to make it more of she was really coming to terms with, this was just a job. And now she's having to face her own mortality. She's having to think, I'm a single mom of children and I just wanted to come to work and do my job, but I'm possibly facing this cancer diagnosis. So I really did try to focus not just on miscarriage, pregnancy, but also the full picture, because women have a lot of things that they're facing. So what was that?
I said a lot can go wrong with our bodies.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And, I did, after I published the article, I'm not sure if y'all are aware of Lindsay, the pre-hospitalist on social media.
Lindsay Irwin.
Yes. She put the article onto her platform and opened it up for comments and thoughts from women. And man, just like with the survey, women showed up, they shared heartbreaking stories and experiences. But there were even a few comments in that comment section that was like, there's these types of things in every profession. Like, you're not the only one that does shift work. And it's like, and there were even women in EMS that were saying these things. And I'm like, this is the same type of attitude that keeps our women quiet, because it's like, hey, just show up, do the job, and shut your mouth. And it's, no, that is not the kind of culture we want. So yeah, I think awareness was the first step, and now it's spreading and getting the word out there. So hopefully there can become policy changes.
Well, we are wrapping up our time here today. So same question to both of you. I'll start with you, Stacee. Younger self, coming into the EMS service, what would you want to teach that brand new EMS provider about the journey that they, as a female, are gonna face, to just better prepare them for it?
I think, okay, first, take your PTO. That it's not a badge of honor to just keep your PTO and hoard it until they finally pay it out. Take your PTO.
There's no reward for having the most hours saved.
Yes, it's not like the perfect attendance award in, elementary school. Like, just take your PTO, you get paid for it. That's what it's there for. Not just for the fun aspect of getting away from work, mental health, physical health, you need that. I would also say prioritize yourself and your family. And it truly is just a job. I get it. People love this job. I love EMS. I love what I do. But at the end of the day, it truly is just a job. And show up for work, but also show up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Dani, what you got?
Mine is kind of along the same lines, and I started implementing it as well in our fire academy. I would have told my younger self to figure out who I was before I identified myself as only a provider. So we do a drill we do an exercise at the beginning of the academy, and I have them describe who they are, and they can't talk about their family or their job. So I want to know the things that they truly are and the things that truly make them tick. And I just have them tuck it away. And so now we save it electronically, but I have them handwrite it out and tell me who they are and why they are that person. And that made me sit there and look at it from my own perspective too, because I had a total shift in my sense of purpose and was realizing that I was really good at work and I wasn't always so great at home. But all I ever wanted to do was be a mom and be a wife and be all of those things. And yet those were the things I was pushing myself the farthest away from. So I think another thing that I would tell my younger self is that there's always going to be somebody that's not happy. No matter what you do.
No matter what career.
No matter what career you are, there's always, you're not going to make everybody happy. So to stay true to yourself and your values and if it's not feeding your family, your sense of purpose, the things that are most important to you, then it's not worth having,
For sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, Stacee from Lights, Camera, Action, EMS, and Dani from the IFF Women's Health and Safety Committee, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for paving the way for the next generation of females in EMS. And this has been the JEMS Report, and thanks for joining us.